Hey everyone, David C. Anderson here, coming at you from the KnifeCenter, and welcome to Knife AQ episode 147, the series where I answer all of your questions, sharp or dull. This week, amongst our questions, we're also going to be taking a look at the differences and advantages of different handle materials. Let's get into it. All right, if you're new to this series, the deal is we take your questions, or at least we give you a place to deposit your questions.
We're taking them all the same.
Well, anyway, that place, that repository is the comment section below this video. And we comb through your questions and pick a few out to feature in these episodes. So if you've got a question you think it might be worth including in an episode, or even if you're not sure it's worth including in the episode, drop it in the comment section below. First question today comes from Rob Clementi, 5016. We talk a lot about blade steel, but what impact does handle material have on usability? What are the benefits of micarta versus carbon fiber versus wood, aluminum, titanium, etc.? I'm curious to hear your take. Usability is kind of an interesting word there. Because there's certain instances where you might want to use one material versus another material, and that's going to be dependent on what you want your knife to do. But usability-wise, like everything works, by and large. Like all the handle materials we have out there work well and can work differently depending on how they're finished, like how they're treated, for example. Wood, for example, we're going to get to all this, but it can be smooth, like on this Brisa Trapper right here. I think this is a Trapper. Yes, Trapper 95. Can be smooth like this, or it can have milled checkering in it. And usability is going to be affected positively or negatively, depending on what you're going for, differently with those two different treatments, I should say.
Safe to say a handle made of Jello doesn't work too well.
There was that one guy on YouTube somewhere who was like actually made a knife blade out of Jello, like found a way to harden it. It was really weird. So blade, yes. Handle, no. Of the handle materials we typically use for handle materials, okay, Thomas?
Fair.
All right. So what I'm going to go through is talk about take some of the most common handle materials, including the ones you mentioned, and tell you what they're good at. And these things can be tailored towards different styles of use, so different usability. But let's just talk about them, shall we? We'll start with rubber, found on this Feldknieven F1 right here, classic compact survival knife. Now we're oversimplifying things here. We're lumping all of this style of soft, injection molded type stuff, although not always injection molded, but neither here nor there. We're lumping all of the different things into just rubber in this case. Rubber typically has a little bit of tack. Oftentimes it's made enveloping the handle, which can keep your hand off of the steel, which can be a benefit in cold environments, but that can be done with other materials too, not just something like rubber, just it's a different manufacturing process. I'm going to try to stay out of the weeds with this. I'm trying real hard, Thomas. Anyway, rubber, grippy, can be made in different shapes, shares an advantage that plastic does, which we'll get to in just a moment. Again, oversimplifying the term here. Made inexpensively and is grippy. Right? That's good. Plastic, and I'm including like the glass reinforced nylons or fiber reinforced nylon, like all of that stuff. GFN on this CRKT shenanigan. But plastic handles can also be done fairly inexpensively, and they're often looked down on as sort of like cheap as a result. But here's the great thing about injection molded plastic is handle complexity at the price, especially. Check this handle out. This is a $50 knife, and every different way you turn this, there's something different going on with the handles. There's contouring, there's texture milled into it to keep it nice and grippy, as opposed to a slicker texture, which could have advantages elsewhere. You've got sculpting, you've got shape, you've got dimension, something that would take a lot longer to do if you were milling it out of a material. Good things about that. Also lightweight typically too. You can have the strength you need to stand up to a knife handle like this without it weighing you down. G10, shall we talk about that? It's basically fiberglass. Again, oversimplifying things here a bit. This is a strong material, G10. It can mill really nicely. As you can see, this one has a texture embedded in the surface, in fact. You can do all kinds of crazy stuff, or it can be left nice and flat, like you have on this Kaiser Amicus right here. But this is a perfect example showing the strength of something like G10. There's liner material around the pivot and the button lock right here, but the rest of the handle is unsupported by any liners, yet it is stable enough and strong enough to be a nice, sturdy little knife. Something that other materials like micarta cannot quite equal. That's not what they're good for. You can also get a lot of really vibrant colors out of G10. Let's talk about carbon fiber. Also a lightweight material. That's kind of what I think of as its really strongest selling point in terms of the knife world, is its lightweight strength. And it might be even stronger than you think. Check out this Fox Suru right here. No, yeah, Fox. I almost thought it was a Viper for a second. It's a frame lock, but the lock bar itself is carbon fiber. Yes, there's a stainless or a steel lock bar insert on the end, but the actual stability of the lock bar is carbon fiber. And it also just plain works. I mean, it flips just like any other frame lock you might expect. And there you go. And you can get, all kinds of crazy different carbon fiber-like materials out there nowadays, like the fat carbons and all of that sort of thing, with coloration and other stuff going on in there, which is all pretty cool. Micarta kind of bridges the gap between like these, high-tech polymerized, materials we just looked at. G10 is, fiberglass resin, basically. Carbon fiber, carbon strands, the plastics, that sort of thing. Micarta is made with usually, or typically, canvas, layers of, cotton. But you can also make it with linen, paper, burlap is another popular one as well. But check out this wee big banter right here with green canvas micarta scales. You can do a lot of nice finishes on micarta. It can take a matte finish like this very well. It can take a high polished finish very well. It's not as strong as something like G10, but it is a very stable material, and it has more of a warm, lifelike feel as opposed to a man-made feel, even though it is man-made. The other kind of true advantage of micarta, especially canvases, and this is true whether it is a high polished finish or a more rough finish, but even more so on those rougher finishes. When this material gets wet, it doesn't lose its kind of texture. It doesn't lose its grippiness. It doesn't start to feel slick, and can actually feel a little bit grippier without having to actually mill texture into it, which is pretty cool, and a cool advantage of the material. Crossing over fully now to like the warmth. Let's take a look at the classic Buck 110. Wood. Classic wood. In terms of nowadays, the advantages of this material, there's not any particular kind of objective, advantage in my mind to this. It's more of a, nostalgic choice. It's a fairly inexpensive choice, easy to work with choice. But it doesn't really do anything that I can think of better than other handle materials, which is not to say it's bad. It's just different. Is that fair?
It's different.
Yeah. Now, the disadvantages of wood is it's not particularly stable. Well, here's where we got to get into the weeds just a little bit. It's unfair to lump all the woods together in this particular case, actually, because some species of wood are, more stable than others in their natural state. Some are harder, some are softer, some can, move around with, shrink over time, even develop cracks or warps over time. So that's something to be aware of. There's ways to get around that. This Brisa I mentioned earlier has stabilized wood. And with that, you basically take the raw wood that you're going to be putting on the sides of the handle in this case. You put them in a pressure chamber with epoxy, and it kind of floods. The idea is it floods the wood, impregnates the wood with this man-made material, this epoxy, which is going to help it, stay more stable over time. Less shrinkage, less cracking, that sort of thing. Fewer cracks, go with that. And there's some woods out there that don't necessarily need to be stabilized. That's what I said about, some natural woods. There's a big gamut. Desert ironwood, for example, is incredibly stable and kind of oil rich on its own. Isn't typically stabilized because it doesn't really need it. Softer woods, such as the curly birch right here, pine, stuff like that, can really benefit. Maple from stabilization. Next step up, paca wood or other laminated woods. Similar products you might see diamond wood, for example, DYAMOND. And that is veneers of wood, layers of actual, paper thin slices of tree laminated together. And this gets you, of the wood family, kind of the most strength out there.
Like a wood micarta.
Like a wood micarta. I wish you wouldn't say that sort of thing. This is a Makusta knife. I actually don't have the name here in front of me, unfortunately. But you'll be able to find this pretty easily by going there and searching for paca wood stuff. Very stable. There still is a possibility with stabilized wood, even with paca wood, you can get some movement and warpage over time, but it is extremely, greatly reduced with a material like this. Now let's get into the metals. Steel, typically stainless steel. You've got it on this Cryo 2 from Kershaw. Classic design at this point. It's kind of, remember when these first came out, it's funny to think of these as classic designs at this point, but hey, there you go. Steel can be, done fairly cheaply. It's not a particularly exotic material. And this especially goes for all metals. It can be smooth like this, or you can add milling to increase the texture. Usability wise, it ranges depending on how you treat it, especially on the woods. But yeah, steel is strong and can be relatively inexpensive and just feels good. It's not a lightweight material, and that's where some people don't really like it as much because, there's a cost associated with it that's not in dollars, it's in calories, basically, of carrying the thing. Aluminum, on this bug out, for example, is a very lightweight metal. Can take different anodized colors very nicely, which is very cool. But you've got enough strength for most everyday style pocket knives, but you've got significantly less weight. I mean, the bug out is known as being a lightweight knife to begin with. And even this version, which is heavier than the injection molded handle versions, is still only 2.5 ounces. So supremely easy to carry, and it's just slabs of aluminum. There's no milling or anything on the inside to reduce weight. It's just by the nature of what it is, nice and light. And finally, titanium. And I gotta show the ZT562 Ti for this. Is heavier than aluminum by something like 2/3 or thereabouts, but it's very strong, much stronger than aluminum, and as such you need less of it to achieve a desired strength than you would with the lighter weight aluminum, which is part of the reason why it became popular on high-end knives, but especially like hard use frame lock style knives, such as this 562 right here, because you could get the strength that you wanted while keeping the weight a little, the weight is going to be lower than stainless steel. Like if you needed the stainless steel for strength on a big overbuilt knife, like this tends to kind of be, it's going to be a lot to carry. The titanium keeps the weight down. If you needed aluminum to do the job, it might be too big, for example. But the titanium is a really good spot for that. But like I said, high-end knives especially love this stuff because you can do a lot of cool things with it while maintaining strength. Actually, that new ZT that just dropped this past week, what was it, the 545?
Yes.
That's the one. Really thin with a titanium frame lock on the back. Still feels super solid. Carbon fiber on the front, unsupported carbon fiber. No liners or anything. Like G10, it can do that. So that's pretty cool. Other stuff is just for fun. Like zirconium, there's no practical reason to do like a zirconium handled knife. We just do it because it's cool and we like it and it's shiny in a black kind of way. So hope that helped, and I hope that was at least somewhat in the vein of answering your question. All right, this next question comes from Danger Dad. Hey DCA, what is a pair of scissors but two knives connected at a pivot point? Yes.
Yes.
Would you Would you EDC a pair of scissors? I don't mean a multi-tool with scissors, but a straight up pair of scissors. If so, which one? I actually do. Spoiler alert. I carry a multi-tool with a pair of scissors. I carry a Victorinox Swiss card with a pair of scissors. So I actually have 2 pairs of scissors on my person every day. But I also do carry every day a small first aid kit. In it, I have one of these bad boys, the Leatherman Raptor. And this is not a multi-tool with scissors. This is a scissors that is a multi-tool. I'm gonna stake that out right now.
Very important distinction.
Very, very important distinction. The reason, I find the need to carry one of these in the first aid kit that travels around with me as I go about my business is, in my life, there's a kind of a non-zero chance that I might encounter someone having an anaphylactic reaction. And as such, you gotta think about these sorts of things. One of the things that you might have to think about is, getting them out of constrictive clothing or something like that. So something like this is pretty essential. So I do carry this. It's a specialized thing though. It's not quite it's definitely not something I use every day. In fact, I'm trying to remember if I've ever actually used them. I think I've cut athletic bandage with it once.
I want to make sure it's still in there.
Oh, it's still in there because every time I open it up to replace the Tylenol or do something in it, I look and I go, I got that thing. These things are just stupid cool. And I could, sorry, let me fold that right back up the correct way. I could incorporate this into an everyday carry if I wanted to, because not only does it come with a belt attachment sheath system, you could also just use the pocket clip right there. Slip it in your pocket and you got your scissor action. You've got a seat belt cutter right there, also potentially useful for clothing removal as mentioned. O2 wrench, no, the other version of this, the Raptor has the O2. Oh no, never mind, it does, right there in the thing. Silly me. You've also got a little ring snipper right here and the glass breaker, if I didn't mention that already. Really cool. So I do that, but that's probably not what you were asking. The trick with actually EDCing, if you're doing it on your person, is a way to actually carry it safely. Most scissors that are what I would think of as EDC size don't have sheaths or pocket clips, so it gets a little tricky. Not to say it's impossible, mind you, but here is an option that I was thinking about for a little while as an option for travel-friendly, TSA-friendly EDC items, and that is the slip and snip pair of folding scissors. I cannot guarantee you this is TSA approved or anything like that because, of course, none of that ever exists. But theoretically, scissors this small should be fine. And they fold out like so. They're about $15. They're made in the USA. They seem to work pretty well. Not world-class performance, but hey, it's a nice small pair of scissors anyway. And this right here could be slipped into the coin pocket on a pair of jeans, most likely. So if I were to have to carry one that wasn't part of another tool day to day, it would probably be this. Although I think the scissors on my Leatherman Juice are better than those. So why don't I just carry that? Anyway, hope that helps. Now we come to, before the lightning round, just a couple of comments I wanted to read from our FAQ last week where I asked you how many knives you actually carry on your person every day. And I'm not, we didn't ask about scissors, but there's a couple that just made me laugh. Gerard Martin 1738 says, 3 that I admit to. Clever. This one might be my favorite. Iron Mike Halloween says, it's complicated. That's good. And Plumber's Crack actually has some advice for you there. You go, keep upping your numbers until they drag your pants down and then back one off. Seems reasonable.
By the username, is probably an expert.
Yay! Nice. All right, now we come to the lightning round for today. D Broncos fan. Hey DCA, curious to know if you tune the knives as part of show prep. No, I sure don't. Some people have kind of accused us of that before, like, oh, my so-and-so, my Benchmade didn't flip nearly as well as the one you're showing on video. You must have lubricated it or tweaked it or any of that. No, genuinely, that's not typically or not ever something we do. I don't go messing with screws and pivots on stuff. These are inventory items after all. But sometimes if something is a little sticky, I might give it a few flicks. And if it's still, not free floating like this one, for example, I might say, hey, this one might need a little breaking in. So no.
What We've also had to get really good at opening random knives.
It's true. We open a lot of things and a lot of different types of things. So yeah, it's almost like there's a lot of muscle memory, even if it's not something I've actually, not a particular model that has appeared before, for example. Yeah, no, we're not trying to hide anything here, basically. Next question, Cab927, terminology question. What's the difference between carbon steels and non-stainless steels, if any? There is a technical difference, which is different from the colloquial way we use those terms. Typically, anything that is not a stainless steel can often get lumped in and called or referred to as a carbon steel, which is technically not true, at least as I've kind of learned and understood it over the years. A carbon steel is simply a steel that is iron and carbon. So your 1055, your 1075, 1095, 1084, like the 10 series carbon steels are the only real carbon steels. As soon as you start adding other things into it, it becomes an alloy. And technically, depending on how you're drawing your lines, not a carbon steel at that point, even though they're carbon steel, right? So yeah, there is a technical difference, but it's probably one that for most of us doesn't matter. For the one person in the comments who it does matter, you're not most of us, I guess.
Type away.
And please, yeah, no shade throwing. I'm just being kind of silly here. MGT Winpop says, what size Opinel would you recommend for whittling? I'll go with a little slightly unconventional choice right here. I like the number 9 oyster and shellfish knife. Bet you didn't see that one coming right now. 23 bucks, 2.3-inch blade, big number 9 sized handle. For me, a whittling knife works best when when I don't have extra blade to get in the way of what I'm doing. And it has a nice, comfortable handle that can be used in various different grips and can be gripped hard and used for a long time without hot spots. And to me, in the Opinel lineup, this is the whittler. Now, the tip on this knife is slightly blunted given its actual, usage intent, oyster and shellfish usage. So might require a little bit of modification if you wanted to bring that tip back. Kind of easy to grind or sharpen down on this. Take a little longer if you don't have any power tools to help you with the task, but this thing, awesome. 12C27 from Sandvik here, also a great steel for whittling. It's very fine grained, can take a very high polished, a very fine edge, which for the push cuts you're going to be using as a whittling knife, great. Great stuff. Now we come to our final question of the day, which is of course our most serious question of the day. The KJ Malice asks, what is the happiest knife in the world? I have an answer. Thomas, do you have a, just off the cuff? I didn't show him to this to him beforehand. Let's see if he has anything.
No.
Okay, good. My answer is, the happiest knife in the world is a sharp one. Keep your knives happy. They'll keep you happy. That's all we've got for today, folks. Make sure to leave your questions in the comments section. We need them to keep this series going, of course, including your most serious questions. If you want to get your hands on any of these knives, you can check out the links in the description to take you to KnifeCenter.com, where don't forget about our long-running Knife Rewards program, where buy one of these knives today, you can earn some free money to spend on a future knife. I'm David C. Anderson from the Knife Center. That's Thomas behind the camera. We're signing off. See you next time.
Let's put a smile on that knife.
Whoa.